Hey guys, what's up? And welcome to another episode of Gayside Stories, where the gay shit goes. I, of course, am your host, Trilificent. Thank you so much for joining me for another week. You could be listening to any podcast, but you are taking the time to listen to this one, and I really, really do appreciate you guys. I love you for supporting me and being here and lending me your ears. Speaking of, if you are not already, please make sure that you are subscribed to this show. You can do so on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, whatever podcast app you prefer, such as Overcast, or you can go over to GaysideStories.com/shows and listen to this episode and all episodes. Remember to use the hashtag GaysidePod when you are live tweeting or posting about the show. If you hear something that you like or something that gets your motor running and you want to start some discourse, then use that hashtag. That way people can find it. I can see it easily and we can hopefully get a dialogue started. Who knows? Also, make sure you use the hashtag pods by QPOC when you tweet about the show or post about the show. It just helps people find other shows, including this one, that are led by queer people of color. This episode, I think we're going to file under growth, growth and emotional maturity. It's a kind of a heavy episode. It is featuring one of my favorite people in the world. He came back. He's been on the show a couple of times. And yeah, my wig is still a little bit askew from the conversation, but I think it was very, very necessary and healthy. And I hope that everyone gets something out of it. So I am going to go ahead and get that started. You guys, please enjoy. So another week and another return guest. This week I have my brother from another mother back again for what I think is going to be a very real and honest and stripped conversation. My good friend Naj, aka the Chartreuse disaster.
Hey,
Welcome back, bitch.
what is your number three?
Yes. Although I feel like it's been a while since you've been here though, but it is number 3.
Yeah, I think we did something last year, but like,
Yeah, but it's October, so last year. Oh no, I'm sorry, it's November. So
oh
last
wow, yeah,
year it was a long time ago.
a long time ago, so nearly 2 years ago. So I'm glad to be back. I'm
Uh,
here for the mess. I guess
well,
in this case, my own mess, but here for the mess nonetheless.
yes, we shall see. So let's go ahead and get things started, so we can get this out of the way.
Okay.
So let's start with the first segment, of course, which is one of my favorites, the queer query.
Question.
First question. What's a vision you have for 2019? Could be for yourself, could be for someone else. Just what do you envision for the year?
Uh, Money. I feel like
Come on, money.
either myself, well, definitely for myself because I have a bunch of things like planned for the next year, and hopefully, if I do them correctly, it'll gain me, I'll be able to secure a bag, either mine or someone else's. But yeah, I feel like 2019 is about money, like because we spent all 2018 being broke. I feel like so. Um, I'm definitely excited to reap the financial benefits wherever they may come from. So you know how your hand starts itching when money's coming. Yeah.
True, true. My vision is kind of the same. So I have a big life change coming that I haven't really talked about, and that'll come later in a future episode.
Ooh, can't wait to hear what that's about.
But that's coming, and it's gonna be a big way to close out 2018. So my vision for 2019 is honestly some kind of newfound happiness and
That is
prosperity.
so real.
And so I'm hoping with this change will bring just new opportunities and new, I don't know, everything, a new attitude. Shout out to Patti LaBelle.
Yeah.
Just something different, and hopefully it just works out and I feel better, because I don't feel bad now, but I feel stuck, and I have felt that way for a while. So I'm hoping that will turn around and I just can prosper. And of course, money. Like, listen, 2018 has not been kind to my wallet. So I'm claiming it now. 2019 will definitely be the year that I got a little ching ching chang chang all up in my pocket.
Listen, I am for both of those because
shout out to Miss Jade.
Yes, I'm looking forward to both, like happiness, prosperity, just being like in a different energy.
Come on, energy, because whoo.
Yes. So like I'm there with you, friend. I cannot wait until 2019 brings our ass, because 2018 has been trash. We all know it. And I'm ready
for
to
us
see.
Anyway.
Well, yeah.
Shout out to everybody who's had a good, prosperous 2018, because clearly that was not enough to go around.
Okay.
Woo.
That pie was real small.
Yes, claiming it for 2019, we will prosper and be happy and experience life in a different way. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
So, next question. If you had to become a member of the occult, which would you choose? And so we're talking witches, werewolves, vampire, fairy, whatever. Which one would you choose?
I would have to be a witch, or I guess in my case a warlock, because I wouldn't necessarily be one of those witches that like use their powers for bad. I definitely would be like a good Samantha Stevens, where like I jump in where I need to, would mostly keep my situation under wraps. But I feel like I would be a witch. It just seems like that if I had to be anything in that realm, I think that would be the most fun. Just learning like new incantations and casting like spells on your brothers and sisters, like to do pranks or whatever. I would be a witch, or I guess a warlock again.
Yep, I agree. I mean, magic, or at least our understanding, our imagination of magic is lit. And the other reason is because from everything that I've seen, being a werewolf sucks. At least our imagination of it. And I definitely would not want to be like immortal, like a vampire or anything, because people are trash and they will be trash through the ages.
Yeah.
I'm exhausted now. I'm not trying to do thousands of years with no, I'm good. Loves and joy.
Okay. That's it.
So I would be a witch. Give me some powers and let me live a regular ass length of life, maybe lengthening just a bit on behalf of being a witch / warlock. But that never dying shit, I'm good. Like, I don't know how I feel about death at this point, but I know that I'm not trying to have everlasting life. Like, that just
right, because how much can you do?
Right. Like, I don't especially depending on what age you get stuck in.
Okay.
Because whenever I watch a show with that kind of stuff and the vampires get stuck being like a teenager, so they always have to like relocate and do teenager shit. I'd be like, man, fuck that.
Right.
That would drive me crazy. Like, have to keep going to school to keep up appearances. Man, bye.
Yeah, at some point I would just give up the ghost. I'm living in my truth.
Okay, listen. I'll be like, listen, I'm black. Y'all can't never tell how old we are. I'm actually 26.
That's it.
But no, that just don't sound. And then it's always fighting and shit. At least the witches, from what I've seen, at least they kind of get along. I don't know.
Yeah.
Witch just seems the most lit. The other one's just too much. So I agree with you there.
Being a fairy, but I'm like,
I don't know what that would look like, because we don't see too many
exactly
examples of what that would be like. Like, what is that? The only example I can think of is like Tinkerbell and True Blood, and
Exactly.
they were getting fucked the fuck up on True Blood. So I'm good. I'm
Right.
good on that. The vampires was fucking them fairies the hell up, fucking them and then eating them. So yeah. Okay, so in usual fashion, the last question is usually a guest question. So I will throw it to you. See what you got.
Well, in the theme of being like visionary and optimistic about 2019, I feel like my question really thinks about introspection and retrospection. So, what's the one thing that you've learned? I guess it could be either about yourself or it could be something you've learned about something or just like some type of like overall epiphany you had. But what's one thing you learned in 2018, like this past year, looking back?
That's pretty easy, and it's something that I've learned about myself recently is that I am not historically as much of a risk taker as I would have thought I am. Like,
Ooh,
I dream these things. I dream of this life and doing these things, but these past few weeks, month, 2 months has really shown me that that's all I do. Like, I don't take the
yeah,
risks to make things happen. And
yeah,
so it's very interesting now being in the middle of a transition into taking a big risk, but it was honestly kind of forced on me. And I realized, okay, in order for me to like really take risks and do things, even if I have a plan in place, it's usually I need some type of, historically speaking, I have needed some type of push to make me take the risk. You know what I
uh huh,
mean?
uh huh,
And then having that plan in place kind of takes away a little bit of it. I mean, I'm a planner, so I'm never, or I won't say never, but the likelihood of me taking a risk and it not being calculated and me not having a plan is unlikely, but
very,
there's still a difference between having a plan and calculating the risk and still actually doing it. And I
yeah,
realized that, especially for the last, I don't know, what year is it, 2018, maybe 5 years or so, I really have not been doing anything as far as just living out loud. And
hmm,
I spoke to my therapist about this before he up and quit.
oh
That
shit,
I felt like I was just kind of here and life was just passing me by. And I know
hmm,
with some of the things that I do, like the podcast, and someone complimented me on the consistency of the podcast and all that kind of stuff, but it all is calculated in a small risk. Because, you know what I mean? Like, there's a reward because I know people are faithfully listening every week. But as far as just putting myself out there, you know what I mean? Like, I've gotten comfortable doing the podcast because it's almost been 2 years.
hmm,
But looking back, I'm like, what risks have I taken? What have I done to shake things up? What have I done to get out of my comfort zone so that I can learn and grow and evolve? And I came up with nothing. I had nothing,
yeah,
nothing that wasn't kind of like out of necessity. It's like, okay, did I travel? Yeah, but traveling, I mean, I was already traveling. I saw some new places thanks to work. Shout out to my old job that sent me to Alaska and all the different places that I went. But what did I do for my personal growth? What did I do that was something that was going to make me go in a different direction and make me learn? Like, it was like I came up with nothing. So I think that's what I've learned. And it's recent that
yeah,
I have not been as big of a risk taker as I would have thought and
hmm,
as I would like, because the honest truth is you can't dream this big life and these big happenings if you are afraid or unable or talk yourself out of taking the risk. Like there's no reward without some type of risk. Even if it's calculated, even if you have a meticulous plan, as I usually do.
Yeah, that's real.
But what about you? I'm curious to see what this answer is going to be.
Oh God. I think the one thing that I've like, it could be twofold, but I kind of already knew the first part of it. The first part is like money isn't everything, and I think connected to that is I just connected but not really connected. But I think the second part of my life lesson for 2018 has been like give yourself space to do what you need to do or do what you have to do or even do what you want to do. I think I would never really just give myself space to just exist. And I found myself being flustered or confused or misunderstanding something in front of me. And that was just because I never really gave myself enough space to understand or learn from experiences. And I guess I tie that to the whole money isn't everything because much like what you just said, I found myself in a rut chasing money. So it was like I had 2 jobs. I was working like 12 to 13 hours a day beyond that. And
yes, you were.
You know, it was all just like there was really no time to enjoy this quote unquote money I was making because again, I still live in New York, so it's not really money. It was just it was just another level of being less poor, but still very broke. So it was like I'm running myself crazy trying to make this happen and do this. And at one point, I was just like, okay, like the money isn't as important as you're demonstrating because you can do fine. You can live a better life with less money. That is so weird to say, especially for me because I just said that I was hoping for money in 2019, but at the same time, I think it's really just about working smarter and not harder. So, and just giving myself space because in April I got let go from like my full-time job. So I kind of threw myself into a tizzy because I was like, what am I going to do about money? What's going to happen? I'm going to be in financial distress for years to come. And it all kind of just worked itself out before I even realized it. So it just kind of it allowed me to take a step back to say, this isn't like, losing your job isn't the end of the world. You will recover and you did the planning, you did the work, you have money in place to cushion you from complete destruction. But like, give yourself time to understand like what that means for you. You're not tied to anything anymore. So look at your options. So I feel like my lesson is very similar to your, I guess, to the frame of what you said. It's just about like taking what we've learned and then kind of just, I guess, pushing the limits of it, thinking outside of the box with what we have and seeing how ridiculous or like how crazy something can be and see how far you can go with it. Like I think that's my takeaway from 2018. There's probably something else more deep than that, but we'll see.
No, all of that is very real, especially the part about the job and just stressing yourself, wondering how things are going to work out. Because Lord knows I've been there more times than I would like over the past few years with the industry that I'm in being so raggedy. And, that orange chart in the White House is not making it any better. So,
absolutely.
But yeah, things have a way of working out. I think another lesson, probably for both of us, is accepting that things have a way of working out, but not always in the way you want or the way you envision. And that has
Yes.
been a struggle for me because
Yes.
I'm a planner. So it's like I'm planning and I'm trying to predict these outcomes. And it's like, okay, but I'm not a seer. Like I cannot predict the future. So
Yeah.
learning how to just be okay with things like that, losing jobs and juggling money and figuring out what I'm going to do for this, that, and the other. It's just like something will present itself if I pay attention.
Yeah.
So that was a good question. And I think that's a good way to launch us into the main topic because there's going to be more introspective dialogue.
Oh God. Yeah, for sure.
So let's get into that. So the main topic for this episode, I'm calling it relationship realness, and we're actually going to be talking about the aftermath of relationships. So getting into where this topic came from. I know you recently came out of a relationship and it's been a while for me, but I mean, the history is there. And so what really inspired me to want to do this episode was I was listening to this podcast. It's a newer podcast. It's called Hella Single, hosted by Lamont Baldwin. And I know people who listen to podcasts that are in this kind of community with Kevin Dwayne and John of the John Effect and Here For It probably have seen or listened to Hella Single. So it's a podcast where this guy, at least for the first, I don't know, 19 or so episodes, he would bring on guys that he either dated or maybe hooked up with at some point or was in a relationship with, and they would have dialogue about why things didn't work out and things of that nature. So it really inspired me to say, okay, I want to have a conversation about my last relationship. Like there's no residual feelings or anything like that. I just wanted to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And originally I was going to do this with my ex, but he decided that he did not want to go into that kind of detail with his life. And I was like, that's fine. So I just put it on the back burner. But then when the things happened with you and your recent relationship, I thought, well, maybe I can shift gears and still have the conversation and just do it with someone else who, has some recent experience with the breakup, or maybe not even necessarily recent, but yours being recent is what triggered, oh yeah, I have this sitting in my queue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So here we are now. We're going to talk about some of the ups and downs and the lessons that we've learned from the whatever you want to call it, whatever kind of relationship you had, however long or short, and kind of analyze that and see where we are now.
Let's do it.
So first, talk a little bit about your emotional and your mental state after the breakup.
Oh God. A complete mess. I felt like I didn't know what to think at first. I didn't know what was normal because I guess for me this was my first breakup because it was my first relationship, and I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what was supposed to happen. I felt like I failed. I felt like I wasted my time. I felt like I never wanted to do this again. I was just frantic and I couldn't really understand what was happening in front of me, but it was just like I couldn't think clearly, and it just made it worse. So it was just like anxiety just started taking me from one direction to the next, thinking I made a mistake by breaking up with him and this, that, and the other. And I just couldn't see straight. So yeah, that was a lot.
Mm-hmm. I think we had way different experiences. Because
Really?
well, here and there, I don't think mine was as pointed as yours. I don't think I was as much of an emotional mess. Like I wasn't hemorrhaging emotional and mental energy the way you were.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's because the situation was so different.
Okay.
And so after my breakup, I had 4 main emotions. I felt anger.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt anger because of the way things went down and because I felt misled.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like the person did not live up to what they claimed that they wanted to be. And not
Mm-hmm.
just in terms of the relationship and how they would be an act towards me, but just for the things that they said they wanted for themselves.
Uh-huh.
I felt relief because I do my best to avoid drama. Like anybody that really knows me or pays attention to me, like I don't bother nobody. I don't get in mess on Twitter, you know.
You just sit there and eat your rice.
I just sit here and I eat my oxtail or my ribs or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it's very, very seldom that I'm in mess. And when I am in mess, I do my best to clean it up very quickly. Like I don't like lingering drama and all that kind of stuff. Like clean it up and let that be done. So I was relieved that there was a resolution to the mess and just the feelings and the situation that relationship was, especially towards the end.
Mm-hmm.
I felt disappointment because it was a short relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have a lot of relationship experience. I've talked about this on the show before. So that was only like my second real relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just as short as the first one. And the first one was like a decade before. So I felt disappointment and I kind of blamed myself a little bit. It was just like, what is it with me where I just cannot get into relationships? And then when I do, they don't last but for a few months. And it's like, you know what I mean? Like I had that war with myself. It's like, well, I'm a catch, I'm a good guy. I try to be nice. I'm generous. I would not say that I'm nice, but I am kind.
Yeah.
But it didn't work out. So I think it's just natural to be disappointed when things don't work out, especially when a relationship, when you think that it will, and you think that this person is going to be a blessing to you and that you're going to be a blessing to them. And then for it to wind up being a shitty mess, you're just like, this is not what I ordered though.
Yeah.
And the last feeling I had was elation. And no shade, but I guess shade. I just felt happy again because the situation was done and I was eager to get my life back to the way it was prior to the shift that I had to make in order to accommodate that relationship.
Yeah.
And when I say that, I don't want to get it confused. I did not mind making that shift, but because of the way things went in the relationship, it was
just felt like more of a burden, I guess.
Yes. And so to have that burden relieved and that pressure off of my shoulders, especially towards the end when it's like we were in the same place, but we weren't speaking, like it was just such a stressful situation, but it was a quiet kind of stressful. And I think people kind of forget about that, or they don't give it the reverence that it deserves. Like that quiet stress eats you up just as much as the loud, boisterous stress. You know what I mean? Like the stress of coming home to a place where the energy is off, like not having peace in your home.
Yeah.
And not having peace with your partner. I was glad to be out of that situation. Disappointed that it ended the way that it did, but I was glad to be out of it. Like I was very, very happy. And that's just real. Like I went through the gamut of emotions, I guess, in a very short time. Or maybe I was kind of like a process through that week. And then once that final drop was done, I just felt good. I felt like walking like I was moving on up. What's the man, Sherman Hemsley? Like I was doing a Sherman Hemsley walk.
Come on, George.
Because I just felt good. I was glad to be out of it,
Yeah.
and glad for the other person too. Like it wasn't good for either one of us. So happiness on both ends. Or I guess I can't speak for him whether or not he was happy, but I was happy that he too was out of that bad situation, because it wasn't 100% one-sided, of course.
Right.
So, being mindful of what he would have been feeling and going through as well. I think I was happy for both of us, but obviously because it's me, I can speak for myself. Right. I was definitely happy for myself. So that was post breakup. So how is your emotional and mental state now? It's been a couple of months since your breakup?
Maybe like 3 months, yeah. I'm good. Like
He good.
I cannot hear that without thinking Bart Simpson. That's me. Anyway, I feel kind of that same relief you mentioned, where I'm like, okay, so this happened. It sucks. It sucks that it happened, but I have nothing left to put into this emotionally. Like I'm not going to sit here and drag myself through the labyrinth of emotion about this anymore. I feel like it's just like a new page. Like a lot of things around me happened at the same time recently. So it's just like they're just new kind of like, it's just like a new beginning, a clean slate almost, where I'm putting my energy into looking forward to into what's coming up next year that I'm working on, and understanding that I don't necessarily want to use the term everything happens for a reason, but shit happens, like we did it. It didn't work. I'm not mad. I'm not sad. I don't hate anybody. I'm just in a great place. It's hard to actually explain because I'm typically not that person to just kind of shake something so quickly. But I'm actually proud of myself for getting through this so quickly. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I agree. I was surprised because a little bit after you told me about it, we were having conversations about you dealing with it, the emotional turmoil and mental turmoil that you were in post breakup. I was like, ooh,
Mm-hmm.
And this came to mind, but I was like, ooh, this is going to be a while before we can have this conversation, because he got a lot that he need to sort through. So I didn't think it was going to be until like next April or some shit before I could be like, hey, you want to talk about this? Like, it's been a while.
Wow.
You good? Just because, I mean, I'm embellishing, but still, I was surprised that it was so fast and you really snapped back. And I was like, well,
yeah.
Look at you. Look at this growth.
That's exactly. I think that's why I'm so happy about it, because it shows that I'm actually growing as a person. It just shows me that. It honestly, I feel like that seeing myself in that space allowed me to apply that to other parts of my life where I was like irritated about this or not happy about that. But it all kind of it just changed my entire outlook on most of my life. So it was definitely a growing experience for me. So I am completely grateful for that.
That's real. My emotional and mental state after the breakup, honestly, I would say I was a bit numb. And because I was numb, I was taking on other people's feelings about things
Mm-hmm.
to a degree, not fully, because depending on who I talk to, I would get a different emotion. Like if I talked to Nikki, it was anger. If I talked to, I don't know, Bree, it was kind of relief and happiness that I was okay.
Yeah.
And so I felt a little bit like a leaf blowing in the wind, but I was consistently content, I guess,
Yeah.
just to be out of the situation, the stress. And so, um, but then that didn't last very long because then we started going back and forth and fighting about the details and who did what and who was to blame for this, that, and the other. And
Mm-hmm.
um I'm still cordial with this ex. And so we've had conversations over the years because this was a good chunk of years ago. And he's matured because he's a little bit younger than me and he's learned some things and he looked back on some things and was like, ooh. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
true, but again, not to put it all on him because there were things that I learned about myself in that too. But the crazy part is, and I don't know what to attribute it to, but I feel like we argued back and forth about the relationship longer than the actual relationship lasted.
Oh shit.
And I don't know if that was just because we had so much unresolved.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's fair to say that that's probably a big factor of it. We had so much unresolved and there was so much emotion that I think we both buried at the time of the breakup.
Yeah.
And that's why I say I was kind of numb, but now that I'm really peeling back the layer, I think a lot of it was suppression.
Yeah.
In order for me to feel numb and in order for me to feel that happiness and whatnot, I had to suppress the anger that I felt. And like I said in the previous question, like that was one of the main emotions that I felt. Like I was angry,
Yeah.
but not to sound like the Hulk, but I don't, I try not to fester in anger because I, I have a temper. And most people probably would hear that and they would not believe it, but that's just because I work to not let that temper get the best of me. But
Yeah.
depending on what phase of my life or what has happened around me, you may have seen it. Like I can say Nikki has definitely seen it. Shout out to her in that trip to New York. Or she's seen a glimpse of it, like at this point I've worked for so long to keep it under wraps that I don't even know what it looks like if I just fully let go. Like
I
am
don't
I
want to get
going
off topic, but what trip to New York?
Remember when we took the trip to New York and we stayed in the Airbnb and the lady was like, "Oh, I thought y'all weren't gonna get here until 9," and we had to sit outside for an
Oh,
hour. The trip when we went to that kolache place.
yes. Yes. Shout out to Jade because I'm going there tomorrow, actually.
Yes.
But yes, I remember that trip. But yikes.
And that
Yeah.
was just a sliver. Like I think she's been
Yeah.
around me and she's seen a sliver here and a sliver there. But outside of that, so I think it was just a lot of suppression. And so over the course of that year that we argued back and forth, it leaked out but I was able to work it out. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it was the same for him, like his disappointment and his anger and whatnot. And I just say, I think I can't speak for him, but remembering the conversations that we had, I think that it took that long. And it took that long just for us to get to a good place where we stopped arguing. And it took
Yeah.
longer for him to get to a place where he could admit some things that I was telling him in the midst of those arguments that he didn't want to own up to. And same for me, like there were some things that I had to realize that, okay, I was cruel here and I said things that I probably should not have said. And I acted in ways that I probably should not have acted.
Mm-hmm.
So it it took a lot, but my main emotional state afterwards was just kind of like a numbness, and I think that I masked it a lot, like I said, because I was taking on what other people were feeling about things
Yeah.
and just trying to do my best to suppress that anger. So it was kind of like a blank state, if you will.
Yeah, no, I get that. I think I've dealt with that after like the first week. I just kind of like ignored literally everything. So it's like none of this is happening. Life is not real, so I'm just gonna float through it. So that's definitely. I feel like shit. I feel like that's one of the stages of grief.
Right. And that's true, because I remember my therapist saying that about a different situation, but I didn't realize it is that, when you break up with someone, when a relationship ends, you do go through the stages of grief. Now, what order they're in, who knows, but
Right.
or at least you should, like, you still grieve that severed connection.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we talked about our emotional and mental state post breakup, and now, or I guess some period of time after the relationship in my case. So what do you think you learned from the experience?
I think it taught me, I guess, how I interact in like how I behave in a relationship, like sharing so much time with someone, sharing so much space with someone, energy and the sort. Um, I think that was one of the biggest things I learned, and it just really gave me a better insight into how I interact with people in general. Um, I was able to just getting feedback from him, or just like being introspective and observing uh, my own behaviors. I just feel like I've learned how I interact with people and how to improve those interactions. Just like sometimes I tend to make facial expressions or certain body language that just alludes to something to uh, me. Well, I guess it sometimes indicates that I'm uncomfortable or annoyed by something, and that's typically not the case. So now I'm more conscious of those little micro expressions and little behaviors that I do and how to perceive them, so that I can better communicate with people, both I guess verbally and non-verbally.
Fair. Honestly, I would say at the time, I don't think I needed to, or let me rephrase. At the time, I didn't think I needed to learn anything, which typical trash is like, I am the wronged party and I didn't do anything wrong and everything
Mm-hmm.
that I did was right. So I don't have no lessons to learn. This is your lesson to learn. But in time, of course, I learned different things about myself. Again, I learned a little bit about my temper. I
Mm-hmm.
learned about my capacity to be mean,
Mm-hmm.
even if it was in a loving way or trying to be loving, kind of like
Yeah.
a
I
I'm
care about
I'm
you, so you gonna listen, bitch.
well, not only that, but it's like I'm saying these awful things to you, or I'm presenting information in a bad way that I'm sure is going to hurt your feelings, but I'm doing it out of love. You know what I mean? Like tough love
Yeah.
type thing. But
Yeah.
then realizing after the fact, like I would not want my partner to do that to me.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that I had the capacity to do that to someone else until I went through that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, even if I meant what I said, I did not mean it with ill intent.
Yeah,
But
that's fair.
after the fact, it's too little too late. Like the damage is already done. And
Mm-hmm.
so I had to mature and grow and learn that I can't just be reckless about the mouth, even if I have good intentions, even if I'm trying to motivate you and push you to do something that I want you to do or something that you said yourself you want to do. I have to take responsibility for that delivery. And at the time, I did not, but it took, like I said, that year of arguing back and forth or however long we were. Finally, I realized that because he brought that up, a specific instance, a couple of times. And at first, I was kind of dismissive of it because it's like, but it was still because it was in petty mode, still angry, still going tit for tat. But once I learned and I processed, then it was more like, okay, I can understand and I can relate and I can realize that, yeah, that was fucked up and I wouldn't want somebody to do that. I should have presented it in a better way. So those were a couple of things that I learned. The main thing that I learned, though, is that I am not as patient in a relationship as I thought I would. Now, I've always known that I have patience in some areas and none in other areas.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, for instance, I have the patience to teach. I do not have the patience for students.
Oh, yeah, that's fair. I get that.
I remember when I was a teenager and my mom was taking like continuing education classes and I would help her out with stuff, math or whatever before I got bad at math. And, she was frustrated and struggling and cussing and wanting to throw the book and everything. And I'm just like, calm down. Like, girl, what are you even doing? Like, just breathe and do what I'm saying. Like, and she, was able to pass her classes and whatever she was doing. And she was just like, you have so much patience. You should be a teacher. And I was like, now let me stop you there.
Okay.
Because having the patience to teach and having patience with children, especially children I'm not related to, are two different things.
Right.
And you can have a little bit more patience with an adult because hopefully they conduct themselves as such.
Mm-hmm.
But I did not, because I didn't have that relationship experience. The only experience I had was quote unquote dating and hookup culture and whatever else I was going through. I did not know that I didn't have a lot of patience when it came to my partner, especially when I'm annoyed or upset or disappointed.
Yeah.
Like that mean Gemini twin came out real quick. He came out to play. Like usually he's on ice, but he came out real quick and I didn't even realize it until after the fact. So,
yeah.
But let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk about growth. So we've talked about what we've learned. What areas did you identify that you needed improvement as far as being someone's romantic partner?
I feel like this is very common, but communication. It's weird because I go through a lot of my day not necessarily having to communicate on a interpersonal level. Like I typically just communicate for work. That's easy. But communicating emotions and feelings and basically I'll actually get a little more specific. Communicating in terms of like speaking up for myself is one of the things that I learned that I need to improve upon. As talking about things I wanted to do, talking about things I didn't like, certain I was treated this way and I didn't like that. I enjoy this. So I feel like I just need to learn how to speak up for myself a lot more. But overall communication, just saying what's on my mind.
Yeah, fair. I think, we stress communication a lot, but I don't think we have a lot of conversations where we can pinpoint a time when we realize, okay, I actually need to work on my communication. Because it's easy to say now. It's like, okay, like I know how to communicate and I say what the fuck I mean. I'm a strong black Pokemon, don't need no trainer. But,
yeah,
that conversation and that journey of how did I get to this point where I know how to communicate? Well, it didn't just come. Like it's not that many people who just know how to communicate like that out of the gate.
Yeah. And it all depends on context too, because I can listen when it comes down to talking about something at work. If it's a project that's due, if I need to talk to a client, I listen. I will say what needs to be said, but I'm typically very unconfrontational because I just really don't have time for the mess, and I don't like people to see the ugly side of me. Kind of what you were mentioning earlier. I don't like people to see the ugly side of me, so I feel like my version of mitigation and damage control is just not saying shit, because if I do say something, it's gonna be ugly. So I that's kind of come back to bite me in the ass, because I've then just become very not passive, but I've just become very quiet when I probably shouldn't be, all for the sake of I'm not trying to ruffle no feathers, because I'm not trying to ruffle no feathers, so to speak. But
that's fair. I think a lot of people fall victim to that, where there are areas in their life where they know how to communicate and they are top notch, but a lot of people struggle with communicating as far as their personal needs and their personal wants, especially with family or significant others. So I'm glad you brought that point up.
And then if you're like me, I don't ever have to really communicate a need or a want to anybody, because I'm typically the one that's going to fulfill that need anyway. So it's like, what am I telling you for? Because you're not going to do shit about it.
Yeah.
Not to be like crass or whatever, but like, it's like, if I need something, there's really nobody that I have to communicate with to get that need fulfilled. But that was different in terms of a relationship. And I guess, being my first, I just needed to learn that overall. So it just I just took it a bit further and spread it out across my whole life.
Yeah. And I think that goes to say about being independent and being so used to being independent and used to not relying on anybody for anything, that's how you feel. That's how you come across. Or in my case, you're so used to being the person that people depend on for things that it's difficult to communicate what it is that you want and what you need.
Yeah.
And I don't really have much to add. I think you hit everything on the head. And my area of improvement was the same: effective communication. Like, there were times where I can admit that I was choosing to be petty and not communicate effectively, and not demanding effective communication in return. Just taking whatever scraps that I was given and then being petty and giving scraps or giving nothing in return. So how did you go about achieving growth in these areas? Like, how did you, after you identified, okay, I need to communicate more effectively, how have you actually implemented that? Because you said you kind of spread it through other areas of your life. How have you gone about achieving that?
Well, it really just came down to me just reviewing how I communicate with people to begin with. And it's like, okay, well, how do you interact with people in every situation where it comes? Like, how do you talk to the cashier? How do you talk to your coworker? How do you talk to your mother? And then I spent some time kind of just evaluating the way that I interacted with people, and I started changing the way that I talk. I just started changing the way that I talk to people. If there was something that was on my mind, I would say it. If somebody asked me a question, I would not be as reticent to tell them how I felt about it. And I also stopped being really worried about coming off as too abrasive, because I don't really think that I feel like I overthink that trait about myself. I don't think I think I'm more abrasive than I probably really am. So it's just like kind of understanding that communication is really going to get me what I want, especially when I can't get it myself. I just really started pushing myself to reach those corners of communication where I was lacking.
Okay. For myself, I really tasked myself with choosing my words more carefully to express exactly what I want to say. Because I don't know if you can attest to it, but earlier in our acquaintance, I definitely was not as careful with my words. Like now, usually I would say probably 98% of the time when I say something, I've structured whatever I said in a way that is going to say exactly what I want to say and should not be interpreted any other way.
Yes.
Now, I'm not perfect, but usually that's how it goes.
Yeah.
And that's everywhere. That's at work. That's with friends. That's with, I don't know. I don't want to say potential suitors because ain't nan, but you know, anybody that I come across, it's like when I say something, I said exactly what I meant.
Yes. Come on, Nene. I said what I said.
I said what I said and I meant what I meant because words mean things. Shout out to Crystal.
Yes. Shout out to her. And you know, the one place that I had to really like get down to business when it came to communication, that goddamn iMessage, because I would be so worried about responding timely, I would not really say what I wanted to say. So now I will take up to an hour to respond. I know that's trash of me, but I feel like I need to deliberate more on what I'm saying to people so that what I'm saying is not misconstrued, because I had to respond to you in 30 seconds.
Fair.
You know, like that was one of the biggest areas where I've improved. And I feel like the messages are more well received when I take a few minutes to think about what I want to say. That includes like typing up a whole thing and deleting the hell out of it and then typing it all over again. But I feel like the communication flows easier if it's more deliberate.
That's fair. And I think that's an interesting topic of conversation because there's a lot of what's the word? There's just I've heard that a lot, you know, people complaining about people don't like to talk on the phone, they just like to text and da 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 da. But I think there is some benefit in what you just said, in that sometimes text, you have that opportunity to take your time and really craft what you want to say, because honestly, we can be having a conversation on the phone and just because you're used to just speaking, you start you potentially start speaking out of turn, saying things you may not mean or saying things that you might regret. Whereas with the text, you might have that time to be like, you know what, I shouldn't send this. Let me think on it. Let me sleep on it. Now, that's also a testament of needing to learn how to improve your communication skills, because you should be able to have a voice-to-voice conversation and not take things left. But everybody is not there. And
everybody's not there.
When you realize that that's something that you do via text, you realize, okay, this is an area for improvement.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So what else do you still need to work on? Just in general. Yeah.
I'm going to use one of my mother's phrases, and this includes myself, but it's kind of what I was saying earlier about the thing I learned about myself this year. But basically giving people space, like allowing people to allowing people to be where they are. And I say that to say sometimes I have these expectations of others that I sometimes shouldn't. And, you know, while some of them I'm not really going to compromise on, there are some that I probably should compromise on. And that said, I think it's what I would like to do better in my next relationship is allow that person to be where they are. You know, we as people come from two different places in life, even if they're the same. And entering into a relationship with this person, meaning you're going to spend 75 to 85% of your time with this other person, that there are just certain things, there are certain characteristics about them, even myself. I feel like in saying that one of the things that I need to be more lenient with myself is not being so hard on myself about things or having these hard and fast rules about what I expect in a relationship and what I am willing to tolerate and things that I don't want to see and like these deal breakers that, you know, I mean, Twitter, but like these rules that I've conjured up, collected over the course of my life. And I think this needs to be what an ideal relationship is, or it's not for me. I think I need to be more understanding that everybody is not going to do everything I want. And I think I need to be understanding of I'm also a person that is changing day by day. So it's okay to be lenient in some places where you might need to see another perspective. So it's kind of really just like to boil that down to say is gotta see both sides.
Mm. You know what? That's a word, especially coming from you, knowing you as well as I do. Just gonna be honest and lay that out there first and foremost.
And as a person that's being better at communication, I'm going to receive that.
Come on, reception. For myself, what do I need to work on? I think, and I'm sure that this has come across on the podcast because I've gotten this feedback, and I've had a few friends attempt a wig collection in regards to this, but I really need to work on my apathetic disposition, I think, towards dating in general and men in general.
You should.
Because, and I'm going to receive that as well. I know, I am aware, I am conscious of it. But, and I don't want that to be confused with, because people hear me be like, okay, you know, whenever I say love, I'd be like, yuck, and all that kind of stuff, which, I mean, I'm not putting on. I don't have any, I guess I don't have any love for it, but that doesn't mean I'm anti-love. Like, I'm not just like, never come near me, never touch me, don't like me, don't breathe, just don't exist. Like, I am open to it, but I think I'm still at this place where I need to be convinced.
Yeah.
And
that's real. That is so fair. No argument.
It's a difficult position to have where it's like you want to be open to it, but you need to be convinced. But then you don't. I think it kind of puts up a block, so you're not really going to get necessarily people that are willing to do that work to convince you. So it's kind of like you stuck, because it's like, I need to be convinced, but this wall is up. And so somehow, some way, in some cosmic irony, the men that I attract are not going to be the ones that want to do that labor of convincing me. And I'm not saying you got to sweep me off my feet. You don't have to take me on yacht dates or anything like that.
Right.
But overall,
you don't want a $200 date.
Well, I mean, if it's on the table, I'm not going to say no, but
okay.
More so, my point is being cognizant of the fact that it is difficult for men to display their emotional maturity. That is the convincing that I need. And so even if a guy has good intentions, it's difficult to see because we are just not good at presenting that up front. I don't even really know what that looks like, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because that's not really something that you discover until it takes conversation and peeling back layers and having that honesty to gauge whether or not someone has that emotional maturity. But at the same time, it's like, I'm not attracting anyone that wants to put in time. So I'm kind of in this limbo but I think it's both. I can't put the energy out that I do about relationships and meeting someone, and then at the same time be like, well, I got this wall up that you need to scale, Humpty Dumpty. Like, I can't have it both ways. And I realize that, but I have not done that work to dismantle the feeling that I have.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Yeah. Okay, so to wrap this part up, let's turn the lenses towards each other. So I'm gonna throw it to you first, and I'm gonna say, what growth, if any, have you seen in me? Now think back to when I got out of that relationship and the time after, and I guess up to now.
I feel like, I honestly feel like you've gained tolerance. And I guess to a certain point, I think what the one thing I've noticed is you will at least entertain some shit. Even, I mean, it may be complete bullshit, but you'll entertain it before you dismiss it a lot longer, which I think is great because people are people, and sometimes they need a little tolerance and patience. Not saying everybody deserves it, but I feel like you do lend tolerance and patience to those that show they deserve it, or are just not trying to make a mockery out of your intelligence. So I definitely feel like that's one thing I've seen change over time with you, which allows for you to, I guess, be more open to interactions as they come. So kind of a twofold thing.
Okay. Okay. Whew. What growth have I seen in you?
Oh God.
Listen, from the Naj that I met however many years ago, however many years we've been friends, up into the Naj that has been trying to date over the past 2 years, up to the Naj that has just recently got out of this relationship. I swear it's like the metamorphosis of a butterfly. It was just crazy to see that because I was not expecting it. And then, as you mentioned earlier, seeing you juggle and learn things throughout the dating process and compromise with guys and where you shouldn't compromise and
Mm-hmm.
those deal breakers, and seeing you, because from the outside looking in, obviously I can look at it and be like, okay, these deal breakers that you are coming up with, like, these are silly, but I can't
Listen.
I can't tell you that because you're not going to receive it. I have to wait for you to make that realization for yourself. And so seeing you go through that process and make that, finally get to the point where you start making that realization, I was like, okay, this is real growth. Like your communication, just your openness and your willingness, I think is the biggest piece of growth that I've seen.
Oh wow.
Like going from negative 365 to where you are now in terms of being willing to meet and interact, and just admitting that you want companionship
Oh yeah.
was a
I guess I
big,
never really noticed it, but you're absolutely right. That is so crazy.
yeah. I mean, again, from the outside looking in, obviously, and this is one of those reflective things where you look back and be like, ooh, the ghetto.
Yes.
But
Woo
now,
Chile.
yeah, now it's just like, okay, you're there. Like I can see you being in a better place now because you've done that work and you've done that growth and you've done trial and error to figure out what it
Mm-hmm.
is that you like and what you don't like and what you will and won't tolerate. I can see you pursuing or being, open to a healthy relationship, whereas before it never would have worked. Like even when you
Yeah.
first started making that change, I was like, that's all fine and dandy, friend, but you are not going to attract what you want giving out the energy that you're giving out. It just is not going to work. And it didn't.
It didn't.
It didn't until you made that change. So I guess it's not really any specific things. It's just I've been very cognizant of the overall growth. Like it's like Pokemon evolution. Like you definitely have.
Well, amen.
Yeah, so definitely in a different headspace, and even, but just to give you your props, I mean the growth that I've seen and just in these past few months since the breakup, because I honestly expected you to, again, not trying to tug your wig too much, But I honestly expected you to kind of wallow in the misery for longer than you did.
Ooh, child. Mm-mm.
And so I
I'm
was
glad I didn't.
I was surprised. I was happy. I was elated that you turned into, an independent woman, like real quick. You was like, oh, I'm good. It was like, I got what I needed. I learned what I needed to learn. I've said what I needed to say. I've listened to all that I care to listen to. I'm good. I was
Yeah.
like, holly to the Lou. I was like, my friend to turn over a new leaf. Because a few years ago, woo,
Oh God!
a few
Like
years, listen, a few years ago, you would have been getting left on red a couple times. I would have been like, girl, girl, come
fair.
on.
That is fair.
Like I'm here for you, but you doing too much. And
No,
so,
that's fair. And I'm glad to I never even like paid attention to it. It's just like it just felt right to do something differently. And I feel like I mean, this is no shade to other places that I've lived, but I feel like living in such a densely populated place like New York forced me to do that in some ways. And, it just kind of all came full circle at one point, and I didn't even realize it. So it's just good to be in that type of place, especially where your friends, and if you notice it, I'm pretty sure many other people have noticed it. So I had no idea, and I just kind of I was so busy kind of in my head, I didn't even realize it was happening in front of my face. So, amen, I'm with it.
yeah, you definitely kept yourself busy and you were on the move, but the work was happening behind the scenes. And I think you just kind of went from A to Z unaware of the journey, but arriving and thriving at the destination nonetheless, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Come on.
So, indeed. So let's wrap this up with some parting thoughts and any overall lessons that you feel like you have learned from your recent dating experience, relationship experience, et cetera, et cetera.
Honestly, I think the overarching theme, I think, in my growth from this one specific instance, be patient with both myself and the other person. I think that goes a long way because being patient opens you. I feel like it just kind of opens your senses up to so many other things. When you're not patient, you're not really in the mind space to be attentive or thoughtful or just listening or just noticing little things. So being patient and understanding that some people are going to go faster than you and some people are going to go slower than you, and being flexible to meet them where they are. I think it goes a long way.
Yep. I agree with the patience. I talked about that a little bit before, like I said, realizing I wasn't as patient as I thought I was. Something that I didn't touch on, I realized that I can definitely be passive aggressive, which is funny because it's something that I detest being done to me. But I can admit that when I was in that situation, I had barriers up and there were things going on. So I felt like even if I did communicate, it wouldn't be received. And so that all kind of manifested itself in some real trash ass passive aggressive behavior.
Yeah.
And it was something that I didn't know I was capable of because I had never really been in that situation. And there's a difference because I can feel a friend or someone rolling their eyes like you didn't know you could be passive aggressive. And there's a difference between being passive aggressive and being petty. I fully admit that I can be P to the E to the TTY. Shout out to Tamar. I know that I have a propensity for pettiness.
Yeah.
And I try not to let that out too much, but I didn't passive aggressive is something that you kind of do, at least in my opinion, without really realizing that you're doing it. Whereas being petty, is a
That's deliberate.
conscious decision. It's a choice.
Yeah.
And so I had to realize and be cognizant of the fact that I do have that ability and I needed to be aware of it. And then the last thing I kind of touched on it was just my words. And the lesson really was that I can't expect people close to me, and this is relationship, family, whatever. I can't expect people close to me not to be hurt by my words just because we're close.
Right.
It's unfair for me to assume that my significant other is going to just quote unquote get it no matter what I say. Like the delivery still matters. That need for tact doesn't go away just because we're dating and we're sharing a bed or whatever the case may be.
Right.
And that was something that I had to learn because I've just had this mindset that, well, we're dating, so you should know me. So you should know that when I say XYZ, what I mean is ZYX. Is that, well, that's not fair. You know, I can't expect someone just because we have decided to be in a relationship not to take me at face value anymore.
Right.
Especially if I'm saying something that I know is hurtful.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So, I need a nap now. Listen, I haven't gone through any of this in years, and I'm still kind of wiped out emotionally, just recalling and shit, tugging my own wig. Yeah, it's listen, emotional labor is exhausting. It's so necessary, but it is exhausting. Like, we have to be honest about that. Like, it can take its toll, but the benefits far outweigh the feeling of exhaustion and whatever else you go through to get there. Like the coming out of it with clear things that you need to work on and just lessons and just knowing yourself a little bit better, it's so worth it. It's so worth it. And honestly, you bless other people. Like, the better you know yourself, the better you are to other people.
Exactly.
Unless you like evil, in which case, I mean,
okay,
the better you know yourself, the more evil you're going to be to people. But, you know, just in general terms, the better you know yourself, the better partner you're going to be. And that other person's going to be able to enjoy you that much more because they don't have to sift through all of the layers to find the real.
Precisely.
Okay. Well, that's going to wrap up this conversation. Naj, my good friend, my brother, thank you for coming onto the show and laying your shit out to bear.
Listen, this was eye-opening. And
it was cathartic.
Yes, God. It was.
It definitely was. Even like I said, even though this stuff for me has been buried for a while, but it still feels good to look back and just know that I've improved, even when I didn't think that there was any area for me to improve.
Right. And that's a big step.
Indeed. Indeed. So tell people where they can find you.
I mean, I just be on Twitter talking shit. You can put my name in the description, but it's pronounced fuckologist, but it's spelled differently. So let's check the description for the spelling of my Twitter handle. I'm on Instagram as Chartreuse Disaster, which is in the title. So come watch me talk shit about cars and food and post random sightings around New York.
True. All of that will be in the show notes. And you guys can catch up with him and catch up with me on the Twitter or the Instagram. Maybe the Facebook if I feel like it. But until then, till the next conversation. And the next time that you're on the show.
Yes. Well, I'm going to see you next week anyway. So the next conversation is going to be real soon. But the next time I'm on the show, it's going to be some moment.
Correct. All right, so that wraps up another episode. You guys can go to GaysideStories.com. That is the hub for information about the show, guests, and myself. All things under the Gayside Stories umbrella should be at the website. You can email any questions or suggestion, listener letters, or anything of that nature to GaysideStories@gmail.com. If you have a little bit of time and you like what I'm doing, you are enjoying the show and the direction that I'm trying to take it in as we count down to 100 episodes, then please go over to Apple Podcasts and leave a rating, 5 stars, please. And if you especially love me, you can write out a review. It doesn't have to be long, but just something that lets people know that you enjoy this show and that they should check it out. I appreciate everyone that retweets and posts about the show and interacts when they hear something. It really does mean a lot to me and it helps keep me going. So I would appreciate if you guys continue to do that and encourage you to do so even more. Like I said, you can always reach out to me. You can DM me on Instagram or Twitter. You can DM the show on either of those. You can like the Facebook page. You can get in touch with me all kinds of different ways. I do my best to try to answer them. Although sometimes I will admit it seems like DMs disappear sometimes. And I don't know if that's people retracting them before I get a chance to open them or if I'm just losing my mind. Could be a combination of the two. Who knows? Anyway, remember, you can also find me on Ratchet Ramblings with Jeremy and Candace. That's over on the CSPN network. And basically, that's just a shit talking fest. So if you want to hear a little bit more of my, I don't really call it this, but my friends call it this, my comedic side, I guess, then listen to Ratchet Ramblings. And if you watch shows like Real Housewives of Atlanta, Growing Up Hip Hop Atlanta, then that definitely is the show for you. If you don't, you might still get a laugh out of it. You may not. Either way, check us out. And as always, I thank everyone for listening. I went through the whole spiel at the beginning of the show, but I really do appreciate you guys listening and sharing and just helping me build a community and allowing me to be a part of the community with my fellow podcast brethren and sistren and everything in between, however they identify. I'm with all of that. I'm just happy to be here. I'm glad to be here. I'm surprised that I'm still here, but I am still here. Shout out to Tisha Campbell. No Martin. Not anymore anyway. I think that's it. So as always, you guys remember to love yourself and protect your walls. Doesn't matter how you identify. You have some type of walls and they need protection. All right. You must protect this house. What was that old commercial? Was that Under Armour where they were going crazy? I think they were on drill. Anyway, protect your walls or they will crumble. And I will see you guys next week.